Gatsby here to briefly talk about myself. My friend group plays a lot of fighting games, and back in the 2000s we played a very wide variety of them. Around 2010, however, I made the horrible decision to start playing League of Legends, and developed an encyclopedic knowledge about a game made to sell anime women to the Chinese. And if you read the title of the video, no, the video isn't me wishing that I learned how to play the piano. Truth be told, I wasn't certain how I would start this video until I saw this on Twitter.
This is, yeah, things like that is why, like, people try to pick up hobbies, and then the moment it's like, because they're not immediately good at it, they give up. Like, come on, nobody is immediately good at something. If you don't put in the effort, you're never gonna get good. So you're just gonna give up because you're a pussy? 'Cause this feels like practicing piano to me, like I said. You start, like, you learn the first two, and then you add on 3 and 4, and then you learn how to connect 2 and 3 together, and then you do 1, 2, 3, 4. And then when you actually pull it off, then you're like, yippee! But no, actually, you know what? The moment you experience any kind of turbulence or resistance in your life that isn't smooth sailing, you should immediately give up.
In the TCG space, Yu-Gi-Oh! Is, in my opinion, most similar to playing a fighting game. Starting out, high levels of play look completely incomprehensible.
Let's go! Let's go! That was awesome. I love the experience. I didn't give up. If anybody wants to do these trials, you can do it. You just gotta be dedicated.
But after playing a bit, you're eventually able to string some coherent somethings into a line to become more competent at what you're doing. And even if you change games in between, the buttons might change, but the fundamentals you developed early on will carry through to the next game and continue to build. 2D, 3D, arena, platform fighters, each of these require different skill sets, but core fundamentals will always shine through. This is very much the same thing for Yu-Gi-Oh! Wild one-card combos look almost impossible to track starting out, but if you break the combos down into their lesser components, lines of play become much more palatable. Which is exactly why that in this video I'm going to provide my suggestion on how new players should approach the game. And for the experienced players, I hope this provides a new perspective when approaching new decks. Of course, given the channel you're on, I will reference my How to Go Fast Speedroid guide throughout the video, so feel free to find that in the description. But prior to looking at any cards, the first thing you should always ask yourself is, what type of strategy are you looking to play? In any card game worth printing, there should always be different approaches on how to win. If you started playing Magic the Gathering and somebody wanted to play Unga Bunga, you wouldn't hand them mono blue control and say have fun. With hundreds of archetypes in Yu-Gi-Oh!, there's bound to be one you'll resonate with. And while there are several great options for new players, picking the right deck is always a challenge. If you need help or inspiration, leave a comment and someone can pitch their pet deck. Otherwise, I'd recommend checking out replay channels and just seeing what looks cool. So let's get started. In Yu-Gi-Oh! You have 2 decks, the main deck and the extra deck. Cards in the main deck usually fall under these classes. Starting with starters, these are usually considered the best case scenario to have in your starting hand. In a quote-unquote good deck, a starter should be able to generate a combo by itself, usually referred to as a 1-card starter. The 1.5 card starter also falls under this category, where the half card is some secondary card with looser restrictions, usually made for discarding. But for simplicity's sake, these can be seen as mostly similar. When learning a new deck, the most important thing is to know what your starters are. It's hard to find the finish line if you don't know where to start, and knowing the full combo from start to finish provides you information that can help you adjust the combo on the fly. For all of these reasons, I would advise learning a deck that aims to perform a linear combo so that you can focus more on execution rather than trying to find some mythical ideal 3-card combo. Referencing the How to Go Fast, Terratop, Marble Machine, and Ultra Hound are all listed as starter cards, where the first 2 are showing portions of the full combo and the third showing the full combo if you have access to an extender. Which brings me to my next point, extenders. While many starters require using a normal summon, extenders are usually cards that allow you to play as an action separate from the normal summon. In some cases, extenders can also be considered 1-card starters, but they're usually used as a response to continue playing once your opponent has interacted with you in some manner that would normally stop you from playing. And with the card pool as large as it is, and decks being 40 to 60 cards, it's important to keep in mind that you should focus on extenders that contribute to your core gameplay loop. Sure, a super heavy samurai engine to set up an early Baron sounds great on paper, but in a deck like Speedroid that puts wind restrictions on the cards you play, there are likely better options available. A good example of extenders would be stuff like Card Turbo or Takatamborg that special summon themselves provided you have a wind monster already on board, but also cards like Emergency Teleport that might require running a Garnet in the deck. So what's a Garnet? Well, starters and extenders regularly pull cards directly from the deck into rotation, and some of the cards that are expected to be regularly searched, summoned, or sent to the grave have earned the title Garnet. The term, coined from a popular engine of the past making use of Brilliant Fusion to send another card, usually Gem Knight Garnet, from the deck to the grave, to gain access to a second normal summon. Since the Fusion card required Garnet to be sent directly from the deck to the grave, having a Garnet in the hand was not only a dead draw, but effectively turned your engine off for the remainder of the game. The term soft Garnets also exists as cards that still have value in the hand, but most of the time you would prefer having access to a different portion of your deck. A good example of this is Emergency Teleport, where your target would be Virtual World Nian Nian. Nian Nian would be considered the soft Garnet, given that it can still be summoned from the hand or deck with Emergency Teleport, while also being a wind monster that can be normal summoned, providing you a way into your combo, given that you have an extender like the previously mentioned Card Turbo or Takatamborg. Cards that you might want to see that aren't Garnets could include starters or extenders, but also include non-engine cards like hand traps. And hand traps are exactly what they sound like, traps that can be activated from the hand, offering you an opportunity to interact with your opponent during their turn. And I apologize, but this is going to be a homework section. Most players should be able to help you out finding out what are the best selections for the format, but some choices I would suggest here are things like Ash and Imperm. And if you're playing Master Duel, I'm sure you're already aware of Mr. 95% play rate. Cards in the hand trap class regularly fluctuate in and out of playability. It is worth noting here that modern deck building practices have begun rallying around the 70-30 split, where mathematically you would want about 70% of your deck to be playable engine, with about 30% of it being interaction pieces. The easiest comparison here would be Mana and Magic, where you want to see enough of them to interact with your opponent at the start of the game, but not so many that you're unable to play your deck. There are strategies that opt out of playing hand traps, looking to play a critical mass of extenders, but for new players I would suggest talking to other players and determine what are the best options for you. Finally, the extra deck is the other portion of the deck whose application widely varies between strategies, and unfortunately this is another homework section. Much of what was mentioned in the starters and extenders can apply to the extra deck as well, but the extra deck could also be used as a home for boss monsters or as an invaluable resource of cards that are meant for discarding. In the Speedroid deck, cards like Rubber Band Shooter act as an extender, while things like Baron de Fleur act as a boss monster for the strategy. Now that that's out of the way, let's talk about the elephant in the room: the complexity of combos and you. Back to the fighting game metaphor, I don't expect you to complete max difficulty combo trials on your first day. What I do expect is that you learn the actual functions of the cards in their respective deck lists. The reason why I keep jerking off complex is because the way they break down each card as a function within the Galaxy Eye strategy is damn near perfect. Link in the description. I went in not understanding a single card in the strategy and walked away with a firm grasp to loosely play the better version of a Blue Eye strategy, because of the way they explain each functional component of the deck. And it was the same thing I aimed to do with my Speedroid video, and I'm currently thinking about doing with a Raid Raptor video. Because if you take one thing away from this video, make it this. You can memorize any number of best case scenarios, but if you actually understand what each component offers to the core gameplay loop, 100% of the time you're going to be better off in the long run. With 70-30s becoming more common, the ideal line becomes less and less likely to occur uninterrupted. But through understanding fundamental functions of cards, learning crazy combos and figuring out how to play through interruption becomes second nature. In the last video I said the 2-player set was a fine product. Now I'm going to shill another product, the Trap Trick Structure Deck.
How you doing? Alright, why don't you have a seat over in that chair, please?
In a recent MBT video, several people mentioned the product helping them get back into the game.
To Yu-Gi-Oh! Specifically, that's on Master Duel, but to the TCG, it was this. What the fuck? A 3-of structure deck that builds into an affordable strategy for competitive? Wait a minute. You're telling me that that's instrumental to keeping people involved in the game? No, that doesn't make sense.
And even though it's not a tiered strategy, the reason why decks like it are so invaluable to the game are the fundamentals that they instill. An extremely straightforward gameplay loop that builds on strategies outlined in the 2-player set, with Xseed summoning being the main mechanic, while also introducing Link summoning through Traptrix Sarah. Like I previously mentioned, for new players, it's important to take a deck with a simplified linear strategy, although it might not sound glamorous on paper, that allows them to focus on gameplay rather than being concerned if they have enough moving parts to end on some number of generic extra deck boss monsters. And with the Tenyi Sword Soul deck being provided in Master Duel to aid the new player experience, I'm hopeful that we get more starter decks like it, because they really are the best way to introduce new players to the game. Unless they're European or whatever the hell this shit is.